Hello, friends. Hope you're doing great today. It is Thursday, February 21st. Yay! All right. So, as you can see, there's some serious staticky stuff going on around here. I feel really energized right now. Just kidding. Okay. All right. So, I've had awesome strategy sessions this morning. That's probably why I'm so energized. Talking to some fabulous people who just want to really take their skills to the next level with scenarios. So we were talking about the upcoming cohort in March. So by the way, if that's something you're interested in starting in March, I will put a link to it beneath the video so that we can talk and see if we're a good fit to work together and you want to join the cohort, if it's something that will help you basically build the kind of confidence and integrate the kind of skill sets that you need to design training and e-learning scenarios that are awesome, quote unquote. Awesome word came up a lot in the strategy sessions. But one of the things that actually comes up quite a bit, because the goal of anytime we're designing any kind of learning is to talk to an expert, get their magic out of their head in a way that, basically you can understand. And then your job is to take that magic that you've gotten out of their head and translate it into something useful for a novice or whoever is trying to actually learn about that particular topic, right? So that's all good. And that's great to know that you have access to the subject matter expert. But I think there's a challenge there because a lot of people say, hey, you know what? I talked to the subject matter expert and they have no idea about scenarios. They actually don't really know how people learn stuff. They think that giving somebody like a giant book is enough. So they're not really even sold on this scenarios or e-learning concept at all. They actually think it's maybe substandard. So how do I convince somebody to give me the right info so I can build out an awesome scenario? Because regardless of how that person, let's say the subject matter expert, feels about the final outcome, like what the product's going to be, you still need to engage them in a way that actually helps you get the right info, right? So how do you do that? So there's two tips I'm going to share with you. And the first tip is a specific question that you need to ask that will help you. And the second one is simply going to be practicing a certain type of skill. So the first is the question. So the question is, let's say one of the things you're trying to do with a scenario is how to move somebody from a state of here, not knowing something, to a state of here, not necessarily knowing something, but knowing that they now have a gap. How do you do that? So you can actually start exploring that concept very clearly by asking the subject matter expert this question. What is different about a person that has gone through this training? And that may sound very simple. However, most people, when you ask them this question, what is different about a person that has gone through this training? Sometimes they haven't actually thought about that. Like basically they think this person now has more knowledge about this area. And that's not a good enough answer, because one of the things you're trying to do in your training is to model or measure things that indicate to you that there's been some kind of change, right? Like you're trying to observe that change somehow. The only way you can observe that change without actually being there is to actually create situations where somebody can demonstrate to you through their decisions that they're getting it, right? So your job is to figure out, how do I simulate that on a computer? How do I create opportunities for this person to show me that they're making that journey, that they're actually going in the right direction, they're thinking the right things, they're considering the right things. How do I do that? So that question, what is different about a person that has been through this learning? That question, you have to really stay on there and clarify what that is. So a lot of answers you'll get things like, what do you mean? They'll just know about the topic more. And one of the ways you can elaborate this is say, okay, all right, so I'm looking for things that I can actually see that there's a difference in the way they are doing things differently. So let's say there's John and Judy, and Judy has gone through this training, but John has not. What is Judy or John doing differently that from each other because Judy's gone through it. How is her behavior, what she's doing every day, or what can we observe about her that gives us this indication saying, Judy's been through that e-learning scenario. What are those things? Now, so you're basically trying to figure out what is some sort of observable difference in the way somebody acts after they've been through this scenario. Now, one of the things that you want to think about is that let me give you an example so I can contextualize this for you. So let's say you have this is a fun example, cultural competence, right? So let's say you have a module that is helping people develop cultural competence. And you say, okay, so, I'm talking to my subject matter expert and I'm going, okay, so how do you, let's say somebody goes through our awesome cultural competence module, how will we know that they've gone through it? And this person will probably, because this is the thing, they're not a learning expert, right? Most times. And that's okay. We're actually trying to get it out of them in a way that speaks to our learner as well, because our learner isn't a learning expert either. So we don't need to use any special terms for them. We just need to get it out in a human speak and then translate it into stories that are interesting and engaging for them and help them have those aha moments, right? So sometimes what will happen is the subject matter expert might say, well, I just want to understand what it means to be culturally competent. And I want them to be able to define the different areas of cultural competence. I'm like, okay, that's good. That's a good start. Okay. But what does that mean? Let's say I understand what it means to be culturally competent, but what kind of a behavior does that translate to in the real world, right? And that might be something like that. And this was a module that we worked on for it was for nurses or the intake nurse at, let's say, a clinic, and the people that were coming in were from all over the world, right? These were from anywhere. And so the training for the nurses was on cultural competence. Now, so I said, okay, so let's say one of these nurses or these intake people is now has gone through this training. What are they doing differently now than somebody who has not? And how is that difference evident for us? Because the thing is, before you've even designed anything, you can now start targeting what are the behaviors that we need to reinforce in our scenarios that help us build these kinds of skills, right? So I could say, okay, Judy has gone through cultural competence. She is not necessarily trying to define anything for us. That's not important. What we want to see is that when Judy is the people are coming up to the counter and she is somebody who's culturally competent, she will reserve judgment. She will be very patient. She will ask open-ended questions. In fact, she'll listen more because she understands that to be culturally competent is to be aware that people communicate differently, that people are, that there's barriers in communication, that whatever she has perceived as part of her cultural competence, maybe somebody else's approach is different, but that doesn't make it bad. So reserving that judgment is huge. So when we talk about those things with the subject matter expert, that's, when we hold off and say, okay, tell me what that person is like now. It actually, it almost, you discover this aspirational path that they have. Like, they're like, yeah, what I'd really hope people get out of this is this kind of practice or this kind of appreciation. And then we say, okay, we can only do so much in this online environment, but how can we promote that to, how can we help people practice making those kinds of decisions, right? So your scenarios now are going to be about, here's somebody, they're encountered with this person approaches them this way. What should they do first? You react this way or react this way, right? What would a culturally competent person do? So it makes it very much more streamlined for you to get that information from your subject matter expert when you are asking those questions in that way. So what is different about a person that has been through this training? And then to clarify more, John's gone through the training, Judy hasn't. What's the difference that you can observe? What is that? And this is a great question, and it works under one condition: that you shut up when you ask it. So this is my second tip, because I find we sometimes we have all the strategies, we have all the tools, but we haven't developed the skill of listening. And the listening is really that striving to understand. And sometimes what happens is we will try to understand, but what we will do is, instead of being okay with an uncomfortable silence, we will add details. Like, I'll ask a question: what is different about a person that has been through this training? And I'll get to like a couple of seconds while this person's thinking, and maybe I'll try to be like, no, what I mean is John has gone through the training, Judy has not. Don't move on to the next step until the subject matter expert actually asks you to go on to the next step, saying, if they ask, hey, what do you mean by that? Then you can say, well, what I mean is, but until that point happens, let them think. So one of the things I also suggest, and this, you should get really, really good at this, because it'll help you in any kind of training you run, also in any kind of interviews, is that people are, you just surprise them with a question, basically, right? You're giving them something to think about. Give them chance to think about it. This will work for you, especially when you're running like virtual sessions. That's where I learned this the hardest way. When you ask somebody a question, they're just understanding it, then they're formulating something in their mind, thinking about it, and then they have to get it out to you. And in a virtual environment, that's even more complicated, because they also probably have to type it, or they have to think about, are other people going to judge me? Now, with a subject matter expert one-on-one, that's definitely not going to happen. Like, you're basically just trying to get the information out of them, but you have to be comfortable with silence. So let's just try right now to be silent for 10 seconds. See how long that lasts. Now, for some of you, you were probably squirming a little bit. If you were, that means this is an opportunity for you to get comfortable with those silences. Because as we call the pregnant pause, there's things that can come out of there. And also sometimes people hold back. So get into the habit of, every time somebody answers a question for you, even after that, don't jump to the next question. Wait. Because a lot of people think out loud, and they formulate their ideas as they're verbalizing them, because all of a sudden they need to be structured in a single path, right? So let them not only get those ideas out, but then think about what they just said, because they might be able to add more value and more details and more story. So 2 tips: ask great questions, shut up and listen. Fun, right? If this is something that is interesting to you and you want to learn more, ask me a question in the comments. Share it. Make sure you like the page, because I do these very often, unless I'm really sick. Then everything else goes and I gotta sleep. So the next cohort that's starting, and a cohort is basically a small group of people who are really focused on something intently, working on a common goal together. So if you're the kind of person who needs to build up confidence about their skill set and scenarios, if you're the kind of person who is looking for basically a mastermind of people to work over the but in 6 weeks to work towards a project and a goal that they can showcase, they can be proud of. And they're also, one of the things we'll be working on is really building the confidence to share these ideas with your stakeholders in a way that resonates with them. So that's going to be really important. And there's going to be a lot of tough love in there. That's how you get awesome, right? So far, it's going to be a great group of people. Anyways, so if you're interested in that or you want to talk more, I will put a link underneath the video so we can have a conversation about it and see if you're a good fit for us. And I will probably see you here again tomorrow. End of the week's coming up. What do you got plans for the weekend? Hopefully learning. That's what I want to hear. No partying, all learning, making the brain bigger. All right. I'll talk to you later. Have a great rest of the day. Bye.